Yo, everybody, so sorry. My internet is acting a fool. I apologize. Please log on again. Uh,
Yay! I don't know what
sorry,
happened.
sorry. Girl, Namibian 5G is a scam. It's a scam.
Oh, okay.
I am so sorry. So
No,
sorry.
no problem.
Let's
So
just wait
just
for us
pick
to
it
get
up. We
back
were
on.
talking.
Yeah.
Yes, let's
Yeah,
get on it. We
go
were
ahead, go
talking
ahead.
about the whole publishing paid me thing, and you mentioned the N.K. Jemisin comparison, and that really stunned me because N.K. Jemisin is the star in that sort of genre of fiction.
Yeah.
So to see, yeah, I mean, she's paid reasonably well, but actually, in comparison to her white counterpart, who isn't even as well known as
Yeah.
she is, I was just stunned by the disparity. And that was just a common thread throughout. When I found out about a few UK published authors. I mean, somebody that I know who's a very talented, well respected author, and she didn't get an advance for her book. And she's critically acclaimed. She didn't
Yeah.
get an advance, and that shocked me. I was like, this is opening my eyes.
I
But I'm all for that transparency, because I think the more people are open and honest about what they're being paid, the more we can sort of shame the industry
yeah.
into making sure everybody gets paid fairly. Because the reason they've been able to get away with it for so long is because it's been all under the radar and quiet. People don't talk about money in that way. They don't
Yeah.
talk about what they got for their book deals.
Yeah.
So it once it's out there, and I was saying to my agent, oh my goodness, this is really interesting,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
now that we see this, what they often do, I think, is they lowball black authors. They lowball us, and they come with an offer that is less than what you actually deserve, because you're sort of made to feel grateful to be in that space. But
Yeah.
actually no, because the quality of work that we're putting out there is so excellent, across the
Yeah.
board, really. So
Yeah. Because
we deserve to be paid the same.
yeah, that's why I'm on my Grace Jones tip today, just to let niggas know that Lady Gaga bit this shit from somewhere, you know.
Yes, she
You know,
did. We know where she got it from.
we
That's
know
right.
where
You
we
better
know
tell it.
this we know, we just know.
Yes,
Anyway,
yes,
let's get back to
exactly.
your story writing. I want to know from you, how do you know something is poetry versus prose? In the idea, when you get it, how do you know which is the
Yeah.
right medium to explore it in?
Well, that's a really good question. I think I'm very instinctive. So I just go, often the form leads the way, if that makes sense. So I'll have an idea and I'll say, oh God, this is a really succinct thing that I want to explore, or this is a very specific particular image, and I'll write it down as a
Mhm.
piece of like prose poetry, and it might be 4 lines, 5 lines, and I might
Yeah.
just leave it at that. But then sometimes it mutates as well. So it can start off as a piece of poetry, as an
Mhm.
image in a piece of poetry. And then suddenly I'll think, well, what would that image be like in the context of a story? And how do I create that context around it? So for example, in my first collection, I wrote a story about a woman who finds a tiny man in her garden, takes him hostage, and starts to torture him. But the story is really about grief and loss, but coming at it from a different angle, and also allowing women to express that anger, because very often women are not allowed to express the full spectrum of emotion. So
Mm.
it initially came to me as just an image, really, as just this poetic image, but it just stayed with me. When certain things stay with you in the body, and, you know, you sort of leave them to ferment, and, you know, it becomes more and more pressing to do something more with it. So in that particular instance, that then became a short story. And when I write my short stories, they're usually, there's a real sense of urgency when I'm writing them. I don't know if that's the case for you, whether it feels like quite a feverish process.
Yes, yes.
Does that feel like that for you? Yeah, that's good. Exactly.
I'm saying it because you say it feels like that, and I need to be taken seriously. So
oh my God, please.
So if a serious writer feels the same things I feel,
You're a serious writer. What are you talking about? You're a serious writer. But you know what I mean? Like it's coming out of you one way or another, you know, and you kind of just have to follow it, you know, you have to just go with it. And I really love that about the short form, but also that you can realize, you know, lots of different ideas. And then before you know it, you have this like body of work. And, you know, you might have deliberately been working on a particular theme underneath it to connect it all, or you might not have, you know, you might just be playing really. So I really see the short form as a space of play. And I always say that to people, you know, approach it that way, because people will say, oh, short stories are really hard to write. But in one sense, yeah, but I think it's how you approach it. If you approach it as a space of, you know, a liberated space really, to kind of enjoy and explore what the human condition is like, and, you know, bring something a little different to the table as well while you're at it. For me, it's like a space of joy, you know, so that's how I tend to approach it.
What do you think of all these clowns who say, oh, we liked your short story, we can't wait to read your novel? And you're like, bitch, respect me.
Respect the short form. No, okay, the thing is, I love both the short story and the novel form, right? Because I do both. But it does really wind me up that people devalue the short form. You know what it is to hold multiple worlds in a book, and each one be different, and you have different that's not easy. In a novel, you're sticking with the same characters across, you know, a particular space, and you stay with them. Yeah, exactly. And it's different. So I get very annoyed that it's not valued properly. I think it's much more valued in the US. Because there are way more journals, the prizes are better, you know, the prize money is a lot more. You know what I mean? So I think it's valued over there. So if you can get your pieces published there, I would really encourage people to do that who like to write short stories. And then, you know, you can, absolutely tap into that US market. You know, I've done it the opposite way, because I'm based here, obviously. So I've been published in the UK and, you know, a couple of other spaces elsewhere. But I think they're both amazing spaces. What I feel like the short form made me discover who I am as a writer, made me truly discover who I am as a writer. I was working on the novel first, and then I did a draft of the novel, and I just got fed up. You know, when you just get tired, and I was like, oh my God, I just need to be out of this space. And then I picked up a short story collection by an American writer called Dennis Johnson that I'd had for 7 years, Jesus' Son. And I loved that collection. And that collection blew my mind, because I was like, what, the short form does this? You know what I mean? I was like, you can hold people within the short form this way? I was just it just did something to me. So then I said, I want to try this, you know, I want to start writing my own stories. So I forgot about the novel for about a year and a bit and just wrote short stories. And man, I really enjoyed that. So I'm really grateful to the short form, because I think I found out who I really am, and what I want to do with my work through writing the short form.
Yeah, I think this is a good time, since we're talking about short stories, to give a shout out to Troy Onyango, who is like my mortal enemy. He's the founder and editor of Lokwe magazine in Kenya.
Hi, Troy. I know Troy.
The best lit mag on the fucking continent, and I hate.
Hey, Troy. He's now your nemesis.
I hate this man. I hope his thing burns to the ground, so that out of his ashes we can build a new world. No, I'm joking. Respect.
No, you're joking.
And
We like Troy.
You know what you're talking about with the short form? I think really it is when you don't have access to or the resources to always write a novel for sustained periods of time, you don't have access to publishers. I think the short story form is something that really needs to be explored more on the continent. And shout out to people like Troy who are running things like Lolwe, things like Salada,
well done,
Joanna,
Troy. Yeah.
Everything on the continent is doing short stories is just amazing, and you're necessary, you're seen, appreciated, carry on the work. But now I've got another question. Ndegwa, who is this random dude from, I don't know, East Africa? I think of East Africa as like one geographic swab. Just East Africa.
Oh, you.
No, I'm joking. He says, please share your experience submitting short stories. So I think he wants to know what your experience is with regards to the magazines that you submit to, the kinds of feedback you get, the rejections, those type of things, because I think not enough people know where they can submit, how to submit, and then just, the process of trying to get your work out there. So we want to hear your trip through that.
Yeah, no, I guess mine is probably like a lot of people. When I first started submitting, I got rejections, and that of course that's hard, but you just keep going. And I think one of the first people to publish me actually was the amazing Kwani Literary Magazine, Kenyan journal.
Respect.
So respect. I love Kwani so much. So they were one of the first people to publish 2 of my short stories, actually. So I always give them credit for that. The wonderful Bangai Wainana, we miss him, obviously. But Billy Kahora, who was then editor, I think, of Kwani, was a big champion of mine. He read my stories and said, God, these are really weird, like really unusual. And I think, we want to publish them. And for me, for an African journal to have that space to say, we want to publish this type of story, that meant so much to me, because in the UK, there was like a resistance, so to have.
That was just our way of saying, you need to come back, but not move to Nairobi. You need to
So I was really, heartened by that. And also I just loved what Kwani were doing, They were also like running workshops on the ground, they were basically creating a nurturing space for writers. So what I did was I would look for other spaces that did a similar sort of thing, that would be willing to kind of work with the writer. So the piece might not be perfect at first, but they would see something in it and go, I like what you're doing. Maybe you need to think about this and then submit to us again. You know what I mean? So I was actively seeking for spaces that were a bit more nurturing in that way. So I looked for, I guess, journals that were open to emerging voices. So I think, look out for those, not just the ones that publish like really highbrow established voices, because that kind of space can feel really inaccessible. I remember submitting to Granta actually years ago. Yeah, I submitted to them, and I mean, it was a no, but their digital editor actually got back to me and said, we're not going to publish your piece, but I really see something in your work. So I just want you to encourage you to keep writing, so that was a nice thing for him to do. They still didn't publish me, but so I would say that there are a lot of interesting kind of edgy journals and magazines, online spaces, radical online spaces. You've just set up something now, and which is phenomenal. Yeah, man, congratulations. It's just amazing. And this is wonderful, because now, this is another space that African writers can see themselves seen and see their stories seen, and, have access, hopefully, to a network of other writers and people that can sort of help lift them, and, you can feel seen, I think. So that's what I did. I would look for journals and spaces that were looking for, emerging voices, were keen to publish Black writers. That was like key for me. I don't want it to be like I'm having to persuade your ass to publish my work. It's just not, you need to, if you don't want it, I'm not going to submit. You know what I mean? So
if you submit a short story and it gets accepted in two places. One is acclaimed literary mag in New York, and the other one is like unknown thing edited by like two guys in a basement in Nairobi. Which one are you gonna go with?
Okay, so because of where I'm at now, I would go for the guys in Nairobi, and I'll tell you why. Because I think there is something really special about that combination of somebody fairly established choosing to go with an exciting new space. Because what that does is it legitimizes that space, and it also means that suddenly other writers from all kinds of like levels will want to submit to that space. You know, I did that actually recently with a piece I published called Three Wise Women, a nonfiction piece, and I chose, rather than going with one of the big guys, which I could have done, I chose to go with a more obscure space that really publishes exciting women's voices, non-binary voices, women of color. And I was like, I really like what the editor is doing in this space. So I said, you know what, let's publish this piece there. She couldn't believe it. She was like, really? And I said, yeah, completely, you know, because I've been a fan of the space, and I'm excited when new spaces crop up that, you know, like doing something different and being radical and creating these platforms, but also not waiting, you know, claiming the space like not waiting for permission. You know what I mean? And there's just something so powerful, because if you wait for permission, they're never going to give it to you. Then, you know, so you just have to claim the space. So I really applaud you for what you're doing. I really think it's amazing. Like, I just have so much respect for that, because there's such a generosity of spirit to want to do that, you know, to want to create something for other writers as well.
Yo,
you know,
you're gonna make a nigga's makeup run, bro. It's up, bro. But this is a good way. I think we all needed to hear that about the ways in which writers choose the spaces in which their work is viewed, because, you know, you can spend, I don't know, half your career trying to get into the so-called big three of lit mags, make it, and then you can have all of these other smaller magazines that are able to give you the same editorial experience, that are able to benefit from having your good story published there. I think it's a good answer that you gave us. And basically this was just a roundabout way of me recruiting you to write for Troy, because we need to bring that magazine out of the wild. Like, it needs to get
absolutely.
Come save the publication, girl.
Okay. I hear the offer.
I have another question.
But also, I just wanted to make a quick point about, you know, choosing to go with certain radical spaces, because what happens is when you start to get a bit of acclaim and attention, guess what? The big guys suddenly start seeking you out and asking you to contribute to their anthologies. This is what happened to me. You know, I went with the more subversive spaces, and then suddenly people started getting in touch saying, oh,
did you hit them with the boy, bye. Did you hit them?
Irenosen, would you consider, like, and then I was like, oh, I'll have a think about it.
All right. Nice. There's a question. How has your gender been a factor to how your work is received? Is Ndegwa the only person in this chat? He's the only one asking questions. So he wants to know how your gender has been a factor to how your work has been received.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I certainly think that, like I said, because I tend to write about characters on the fringes, especially Black characters on the fringes, complicated people and complicated, messy women in particular, and messy Black women. You know, I'm not trying to do that whole thing of like making them perfect, because that's not how we live. You know, I think sometimes there has been a little bit of surprise about that, and sometimes there is a little bit of surprise that this physical body is producing those stories. You know, I've had people come up to me at events say, God, I've been reading your pieces and I'm just really surprised that this comes from a woman, that this comes from you. You know, there's anger, there's revenge, there's a lot of this dark stuff. And I said, well, you know, that's because as human beings, we go through the gamut of emotions and experiences. And just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that, you know, I should write in a particular way or write particular stories. You know, I'm telling them in the way that feels most authentic to me. And that's really all I'm doing. So when people are like surprised, or because A, it's coming from a woman, and A, it's coming from a black woman, that's their business, really. You know, that's how I see it. I mean, as a black woman, I'm used to people, unfortunately, projecting stuff onto this body, you know, and I'm sure as a black man as well, you've had that experience where people see or expect certain things and then are surprised for whatever reason. So
I mean, I can see my DMs becoming a mess after this, because people don't know their cheekbones. They don't know.
You don't confuse them. You don't confuse them. My goodness. The cheekbones are killing it. They are killing it. You make a very beautiful woman, I have to say, girl, Rémy. You make a really... This
is how I'm fundraising for Duke. Niggas don't know. But I'm about to finish all their monies. All the money.
I love it. I love it. You know, so... Yeah, so yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but I try not to think about that too much. You know, I try not to worry about those kind of things, because then you start to feel like, oh, well, maybe I should do this, or maybe I should, and it starts to like water down your intention. So even when I come across it, I just ignore it, really, you know, because I think that, you know, fiction does what it does, and you have to be true to yourself as an artist and just, you know, write the stories you want to write, without worrying how people are going to receive them, because they will always find an audience, even if it's an audience of 10 people that get it, or even if they don't get it, but they're like, I don't know, this is interesting. I don't know what the hell's going on, but this is interesting, you know? So that's how I approach it.
Yeah. Question.
How about you? How about you, Rémy? How about you?
This is about Irenosen. This is about Irenosen. You came here. Do you think I'm the draw card here? I'm the undercard fight girl. People came here to see Irenosen.
That's not true. You are definitely... Excuse me, Kane Prize shortlisted author. You are definitely like part of this. You know, it's amazing.
But at the same time, it's like Irenosen. Do you think I took this gig because I wanted to interview myself? Anyway, so we have a question: rosé or prosecco?
Oh, rosé, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Poetry or cocaine?
Oh, aren't they both? Aren't they both? Both. I'm going to cheat and say both. Which one has
got the fire lines? Which one has the fire lines? Oh,
I love my poetry. I love my poetry. But I might have to say cocaine, because we're just leaving it all out there today. So we're just leaving it all out there today, damn it. So...
Yo, guys,
it's cocaine today.
Cancel the festival. The festival ends here today with Irenosen. There's nothing after this, guys. Cancel the festival. Just Zukiswa, phone everyone and tell them we're finished.
Robbie,
this is the first person who's been honest, who's been at least trying to answer this question. No, cancel the festival. Everyone else is finished. It's done. Irenosen.
We don't shut it down. We don't shut it down.
Literature is finished. Literature is finished. Next question. There's another question. Chike from Nigeria, who's this big Nigerian writer. He wrote The Lives of Great Men, and Chike is...
Oh, yes! Yeah, I think I've met him, actually.
Man. I've met him.
Yeah.
He is a great man.
Yeah, lovely guy. Hi, Chike.
He wants to know, where can he get those earrings?
Oh, these earrings. Good question. You know what? My sister got me these earrings, so I don't know where she got them from. I'll have to ask her. But it was a gift. It was a gift, yeah.
Okay, so Chike, you need to get contact of Irenosen. Use your Nigerian connections.
We follow each other on Twitter, I think. So, yeah, I'll find out and DM him.
Yeah. Troy wants to know, what are some of your biggest literary influences?
Oh, good question. So I would definitely say Toni Morrison, because I read jazz when I was like 13, 14, and it really, yeah, it really, that young, it really had an impact on me because I hadn't seen work that captured the Black American experience in that way so potently. And, you know, just reading her work, you can see that her influence and how well read she is, because the work is so rich and dense with references, and so like beautifully written. So, and also that book mimicked the genre of music, jazz, like the way it was written. So Toni is actually quite an inventive writer, and I think a lot of people don't talk about that enough in regards to her. They talk about her socio-political impact, which is important, but this is the problem. I feel like a lot of Black writers don't get their dues for actually pushing the boundaries with form. You know what I mean? And that frustrates me. So whenever I talk about Miss Morrison, I always talk about that aspect of her, because I think that gets lost in the conversation. You know, and also interesting that she was an editor as well. She published some great Black voices before she became a writer herself. So I find her really inspiring. Things Fall Apart is one of my favorite books ever. Still, the great Chinua Achebe. I mean, he's just a great storyteller, you know, from beginning to end.
He was like for a lot of people, I guess my age, maybe even younger, he was the first African writer that we encountered in high school. It was the very first one. And he was the only one for a very long time, because, you know, African writing doesn't get around even on the continent.
So that doesn't surprise me. Achebe, so Buchi Emecheta, I really like her writing as well. In fact, I met her son, who's kind of taken over her literary estate, and I was almost in tears because they did a celebration to honor her work and they asked me to read, and I was just like, I was so touched, but also I was like, oh my God, I wish I'd met her when she was around, because she's such an inspiration to me, you know, just a kick-ass woman. Like, the writing was amazing, but also her life story, like what she was going through. She had this man who was like not supportive of her work, and so she kicked him to the curb. She was raising her kids, you know, really fighting for herself to be seen and heard. So that her book, like In the Ditch, I read that book as a teenager, and I remember giving it to my mother, and gave it. I gave it to can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
I gave it to my mother, and we then had a dialogue about it, and that was such a special thing, to read a book and share that book with my mother. So then I sort of introduced her to Buchi Emecheta. So there is this like connection of her through myself and my mother, you know, with women. So it was just like a lovely, lovely thing. So I really have huge admiration for her. I mentioned Amos Tutuola. I just love what he did. He is like, that book is just, it's such a standalone book, and unlike anything I've ever read.
Has anyone you've recommended the book to made the mistake of saying, you mean drunkard? And you're like, no, bitch, drunkard. It's drunkard, bitch, yeah.
He deliberately did that. You know, again, just the courage to play, you know, to be like fearless with his fiction, really, really stayed with me. And I love that he was an African writer that did that, you know. So yeah, there is that lineage there. It's just that but people don't really tend to know enough about those kind of writers. So, I mean, yeah, there's loads of other writers, all sorts of writers. There's a writer, an American writer called Miranda July, who writes short stories that I really like. She's also a filmmaker. So it's interesting to me that her pieces feel quite filmic, but they're also just strange stories, you know, about the human experience. And I read her collection and really liked it as well.
Yeah, have you heard of this writer called Mukoma wa Chickens?
The name rings a bell, yes.
Yeah, Mukoma wa Chickens is like this Kenyan writer who got exiled to the US. So his father is Ngugi wa Thiong'o, but he disowned him and
Oh
called
yeah.
him Mukoma. Yeah, he called him wa Chickens because he didn't want his name attached to him. So Mukoma wa Chickens has a question, and he wants to know, do you think there is a growing divide between diaspora-based writers and those on the continent? He suspects it's generational, that for the youngest writer, it might not be so much. But do you think there's a growing divide between diaspora-based writers who might be mostly maybe concentrating in the West and those who are working from the continent?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there's certainly a separation, but that's due to like geography and not necessarily that it's intentional. I just think that because there is that separation, it's difficult to feel more connected, which is why, you know, spaces who are trying to do that are really important, that try to kind of bring writers together, or I don't know, create spaces where you can have conversations and you can have some sort of cultural exchange. I think that would be really great. Like one of my favorite things I did, in fact, one of the best experiences I had was going to Ake Festival. I know that I'm Nigerian, so, you know, but I went to Ake Festival in 2015 and it just had such a interesting program of diasporic writers and writers based in Africa. You know, it was just a really good mix. So you got introduced to writers you may not normally come across, you know, really exciting African voices. And the wonderful thing was that the environment and atmosphere meant that we would all sit together, we would have lunch together, we would go to see each other read and have the Q&As. So it was just this wonderful, like, and then, you know, to see Black writers having these amazing conversations, like what we're doing now, God damn it. You know, this is great. Like Afrolit Sanford is fantastic because I think that it's doing the same thing. It's bridging that gap. So it can be done. It's just that it's not being done enough, you know. So that's how I feel about it. I think there's room. I think there are, you guys are doing it, you know, Ake's doing it, and there are other spaces doing it, and maybe a couple of other festivals, but we need to do it more, and we need to think about how we make people feel more connected, you know. So because that's really important, because I also want to hear voices, you know, from Africa and know about their work and what they're doing, because maybe I can champion some, or, you know, I can be supportive, or introduce somebody to an editor, or go, oh my God, this guy's really great. Do you want to talk to this agent? You know, there are things that I can do, and that people who are here can do as well, or people in the US can do. So it's that thing. It's like we have to think about each other, man. You know, it can't just be I'm in my bubble and I don't want to extend the ladder, or I don't want to know, you know, what's going on with you because I'm not there. That's not how it should be. You know, that's why when I got published by Kwani, it was such a phenomenal experience for me, and I was so proud to be published by that journal. Like, it was one of the first journals to publish me, and it's an African Kenyan publication. And by the way, it's kick-ass. By the way, it's innovative. By the way, the variation in styles and language and tone and aesthetic is beautiful. You know, if you ever have one of the Kwani books, you see what they do, right? So I was just so thrilled to be, you know what I mean? So I think, yeah, we need to do more of that. It's being done, but not enough. So I just want us to keep doing it.
Yeah. There's a, let me scroll up. Coffee Girl Reads wants to let you know that you completely transformed her life when she encountered your work. So shout out to
I completely transformed.
Yeah.
What?
Coffee Girl Reads, you transformed her life. She says you made her, Irenosen, you made me feel less alone. Thank you. So power to you, Irenosen.
Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you. I'm so glad you read the work.
Yeah. I have another question. So if you're doing short stories, and you're working on a collection, I mean, there's a big difference between writing one short story, finishing it, and then writing another short story, and then finishing it, and then moving on, like, through a list of short stories. What goes into, at least for you, what goes into the process of compiling a collection? Yeah. So let's say if you have 30 short stories or X a number, how do you choose the ones that would, for example, make Nudie Branch? How did you go about that process?
I always go with the ones I'm most excited about as a standard, because if I find it exciting or see something exciting in it, and also while I'm writing it, the process was exciting, then that to me is just a stamp that it needs to go in. If I come to it later after having written it and I feel like, oh, it's not really doing it in terms of what I intended, then I'll take it out, you know, and I have done that in the past as well. But generally, like with Nudie Branch, you know, every story that was written for it.
Did I say Nudie Branch?
Yeah, some people say Nudie Branch.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But generally, like with, the stories in this collection, pretty much most of the stories I wrote for it went in. Just because I was just really excited to get them out there, and just creating like these different worlds, but hopefully that have a connection, I think, running through them, of, you know, characters on the cusp of some sort of change, whether large or small, and just the kind of strange things that human beings do when we're transitioning. I think a lot of my writing is about transformation, you know, transformation in life, transformative spaces. So I think that's something that runs through the collection. So in coming back to it, when it was like, well, compiling it to send off to my editor, who of course would then get back to you and say, oh, maybe this should go in, maybe that go. You know, that was what I was looking at, like what stories fit the theme, like thematically, but also all feel slightly different, you know. So I have some like funny stories in there, you know, some dark stories, obviously, inevitably, you know, some stories about all kinds of things. There's a story about a woman who is struggling with her pain and does a drug trial, and that whole process is kind of crazy because she's trying to come to terms with past pain. You know, there's a story about monks, time traveling monks, because I'd always wanted to write about monks. I've always just been curious about them, so I wrote that story. So there's a real mix in it, you know, and I try to do that with my work. I try to have something that's quite eclectic, you know, for people to read. So even if all the stories aren't for you, there'll be something there that hopefully speaks to you in some way.
Yeah. Sam, I'll just say Sam wants to know, how do you know when to stop fiddling with a short story?
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of writers say, God, even when it's published, I look at it and go, I could have changed that line, or I could have done this. I think I know once I get the okay from my editor, because it's a collaborative process as well. In the beginning, I found it hard working with an editor because, you know, they always want to cut stuff or make you do more work. You know what I mean? And you're like, why do I need to do more work? I've already done the work, you know, but it's really for the good of the story, and it's really to make it as strong as possible. So what I always say is, if the final piece meets my intention, my original intention for the work, then I'm happy. Does that make sense? If it lives up to my expectation, because everybody has an expectation for the work when they're writing it, and sometimes that changes in the process, right? And then you read it and you're like, well, this is not really what I wanted to do. So maybe I'm going to play with it a bit more and work on it for a bit longer, you know. And sometimes that has happened. Of course, that's happened many times when I've written stuff and just like, oh, it's not quite there yet, or it's not doing what I wanted it to do. I'm going to sit with it for a bit and then I'm going to come back to it, you know. But generally, you know, most writers do a couple of drafts of edits, really, I think, for their pieces. So I think just like be patient, you know. The process is, it's like a jewel, you know. Your this jewel is emerging the more you work on it and fine tune it and make it better, and you'll know when it feels like a good piece. I think most writers do, right? Like, you know,
like it's intuition, I guess. You feel like
exactly, it's intuitive. Yeah. So you go with that.
I'm not a serious writer like Irenosen, so
You are a serious writer,
I just
Rémy.
find a place to quit. I just find a place to
No,
quit.
you're a serious writer, please. You need to stop saying that.
No. I need to say this so that Dengwa doesn't start thinking I'm his mentor. I don't want him to start sending me his manuscripts. But Dengwa has a question now, and he wants to know. I'm not sure whether this question is spelled in. He says, "Who is a good editor in your opinion?" And I'd like to add on my own and ask, what is a good editor for you? So who do you think is a good editor, and what is a good editor?
Okay, so who, as in people I've worked with, or just what makes a good editor?
I'm not sure about his question. I think his question is about who you might have worked it with and who you think is good. But mine generally is like, from the people you've worked with, what makes the good? What makes you think someone is good?
Yeah, so I've worked with some really good editors. So my agent used to be an editor. So, you know, she always gives like, and she's a very close reader. You know what I mean? Having had that editorial eye, she will often pick up on things and go, well, you kind of lost the thread a bit there. Do you want to look at that again? Or I don't think that image quite works. Maybe you should take it out because it's too much in that section, you know? So just being able, I think, I've worked obviously with some good editors. You know, my publisher, Charmaine Lovegrove at Dialogue, again, she tends to feedback more broadly, I think, on the work. So she will say, oh, I really like this story, this particular story, maybe you need to think about changing this aspect, or the middle needs tightening, or, you know what I mean? So you have to, I think, develop a thick skin, because obviously, you know, they wouldn't do that if they didn't like the work. You understand what I mean? So I think that's why you have to be open to it. It can be tough in the beginning because you think, well, they're trying to mess with my work, girl. Like, why are they trying to mess with the work?
Precisely. That is exactly how I feel. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yes.
I'm like, if I wanted to write the story in your head, I would have done
yes.
It, but I wrote
this is it. Seriously, honestly, I'll tell you a funny story about that. So with my debut novel, when it got picked up by Jacaranda, my editor is a great editor actually called Roxana Yamin, and she read the novel and then got back to me with some edits, and I was like, this woman is crazy.
This woman be tripping.
I was like, she is tripping. She wants me to write a different book. So then I got on the phone to my agent, and I was like, listen, Roxana wants me to write a whole nother book. And my agent was like, well, calm down. Just taking some of the stuff that she said and see how you feel about it. Obviously, you don't have to take everything on board. Yeah, so I kind of went away. You know, this is the thing as well. You don't have to say yes to everything. You absolutely, as the author, have the agent to say, I don't want to do that for this reason. As long as you can back it up, you know, then you have space to do that. But if you can't, then you might have some issues with the with your editor. But so what I did was I went away and actually, like, some of what she suggested was really good, and then I was like, okay, so I'm gonna take on XYZ because I think that's gonna make the work stronger, but I'm not gonna go in this direction because that's not the novel I was trying to write. You know, so, but I also think that you have to have a real awareness again about the work, you know, and what you want to do with it and where you want it to go to be able to make those decisions. Because also, don't be afraid to push back. Don't be afraid to push back if you feel like it's not the right edit for you, because I think sometimes writers can be so grateful that they're being published that, you know, they might say, oh yeah, that every edit, yes. And sometimes that might not be the right thing. So you really have to sit with it, I think. And the way I judge it is if something chimes with me in the sense that it was an issue I was worried about before the editor let me know. So if there was a piece of dialogue, for example, that I was like, I'm not sure about that piece of dialogue. And then in the edit feedback, the editor's like, you know, that piece of dialogue, I don't know, it was a little flat. Then I'm like, bang, 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 bang. I was right. You know what I mean? So sometimes they pick up on stuff that you already have on your kind of writer's antenna, but you're not sure because you're too close to the work, you know? So I think that's the thing. I think to come to your question, which is a really good question, you know, what makes a good editor? I think an editor that will be brutally honest with you, who likes your work, but will tell you what needs to be done to make it stronger without it being a combative battle. You know what I mean? I think the smartest editors know how to strike that balance. You know, they know how to highlight what's good about the work to kind of soften you up. You know, they'll go, oh my God, you know, I just loved this character. I'm just with this character, man, what you've done. And you're like, oh yeah, good. And then they'll go, bam, but did we really need to take it in that direction? Maybe you should think about this instead, you know? So then you're like, oh, okay, interesting. So I think you have to be able to talk to your writer. And actually that's a real skill, to be able to understand the writer you're working with, what they're trying to do, how you can complement that process.
Be emotional. Writers are a mess.
This is it. Especially if you're working with a new writer. You know, if you're working with a new writer as well, who isn't used to that process, it can be like quite raw, you know, so you have to kind of be able to navigate that, I think, and just be very smart in how you do that, you know. So yeah, I mean, I've heard some stories, man, from other writer friends of mine about certain editors that are just like brutal. But, you know, there are great editors out there that really care about the writers they work with and are super passionate and really proud, you know. So if you have a writer like an editor like that, I think the best editors are the ones who really love your work. You know what I mean? Like, they are invested in your growth as a writer. Not the ones where you're just another writer on the list. That's the difference to me. That's huge, because what that means is they want you to be your best self. They want the work to be the best it can be, and you work collaboratively. You know, it's not hierarchical. It's not, oh, I'm here to tell you this. It's like, what do you think about these suggestions? So these are the kind of editors I like working with, when they say, what do you think about these suggestions? Have a think, not dictating to you, but saying, have a think about them. The ones that you think might work, let's talk about it and maybe apply it. And then the ones you think won't work, just let me know why you think that is, and then we can let it go. You know what I mean? So it's like a fair process, and you don't feel like you're being controlled. You feel like you have agency in the process. So that to me is what I look for.
Yeah. So I mean, you've been writing for a while, but I'm curious to know how you keep a roof over your head as a black female. I
hustle. I have to hustle.
Because I'm about this writing life as well, but you know,
me,
I had to trap my wife in marriage. Now I'm a scrub. So you know, I just want to know how a respectable author keeps a roof over their head. Because I'm that dude from the TLC song. By the way, this guy called Troy. Doesn't Troy sound like a nigga from like a 90s R&B song? Like Troy Rose. Like Erykah Badu sang a whole thing about this guy called Troy Rose.
Sang a song about Troy.
Troy sounds like a do-rag wearing dude from like 90s R&B video who is sleeping with girls and leaving them alone. Like, can we just talk about this?
Oh my God, Troy, are you hearing this? Oh my goodness! But
anyway,
how do
the economics work out in the
so I have so I work as a freelancer in the arts. I do lots of different things. So I work for another literary prize. I do the programming for that prize, which means I organize all their events and work with the writers to kind of help get their names out there. I also do like marketing for tours. I do workshops. I write articles. So I basically like hustle, you know, and I get asked to do, I do a lot of judging as well, judging on other like short story prizes and stuff, which is quite good paid work if you can get it. So it's just like a mix of everything really, but that's just because I think it's the Nigerian in me. I'm just like, you know, I never just think sit
Oh,
back.
the Niger hustle demo.
You know, I just think like hustle, you know, just like do other things as well, because obviously you can't earn a living from it just immediately. You know what I mean?
But,
So
but,
don't give
but,
up.
Irenosen, publishing paid me has shown us that you can. You actually can. We just need to go fight for
Oh
it.
yeah, this is the thing, like it's different for certain people, so you can do it, you know, and obviously, you know, the aim is to be able to get very, very well paid for the writing, so that, you know, that's what you can do. But the interesting thing is, I think being who I am, I have to have stuff going on, like, you know, to be able to write. I can't be one of these writers that just has nothing else. I can't do it because I think I'd be bored. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd be bored. So I have to
Yeah.
have something going on.
Yeah, no, actually, you know what? I have met a couple of writers who say that like that's all they do full time, and I'm just like, that sounds miserable. Is it just
Yeah,
me?
I mean,
It
it's
just
just,
sounds
I don't know.
sad.
It's like, sounds like a little bit tedious. I'm like, really? That's all you do? You don't do anything else? Like, wait, like, how do you feed the work? Like, you know, because you have to have stuff to write about. You need to go on some
Yeah,
adventures. You need to like
yeah,
experience some stuff, you
yeah.
know. So
And
I think even if it's obviously it'd be great to get paid brilliantly, you know. So, but even if, you know, you get to that stage, you still want to have stuff going on, I think, you know. So that's how I
and
see it anyway.
and with all of these hustles you've got going on, how do you make time for your work still? How do you
Yeah,
fight for
yeah.
that space and do it?
Yeah, I really protect that writing space, because I find it almost like a transcendental space. Like, I don't know if you feel that way. It's like, it's
Mm,
just such a special space to be able to come to, and it feels almost meditative sometimes when you really get into your
yeah,
groove with it, you know. And when it's like that, I really love it. And what
yeah,
I tend to do is I tend to write 3 days a week when I'm working on a project. So I write weird little prose poems every day, about 8 prose poems every day, short ones, because that's just my writing practice and it keeps me connected to the writing. And then when I'm working on a project like a short story collection or a novel, as well as that, I write 3 to 4 days a week, first thing in the mornings. I
mm,
write maybe 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. and I write for 2 hours. That's it.
nice.
2 hours. I keep it short and sexy because I feel like the writing is really exciting when it doesn't feel like a chore. And,
Mm,
you know, that early morning space where you're sort of half asleep, half awake, I think really lends itself well to the sort of writing that I like to do, you know. So some people might write in the afternoons or write in the evenings. By the time I've worked, I'm too tired to write in the evening. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And there's something about writing earlier in the day that feels like a bit of a, I don't know, it's just a great feeling if you're writing while other people are asleep, you know. And then you can write your bit, that your target, and then go off and work or go to a museum or to a concert or to meet friends, or, and it just feels like it's still happening, it's bubbling away. Incrementally you're building a piece of work. So that's how I approach it. You know, some people can sit and write for 7 hours in a day. I don't know how those people do that, because seriously, by after 2 hours I'm like, I need to go and get some snacks,
yeah.
or, you know what I mean. I'm just like, where's the food at, or like, what else is going on? You know what I
I
mean?
totally hear you. Totally hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
I
our
think you have
time
to.
is almost, yeah. Our time is
Oh no,
almost
I
up,
was just going to say,
Irenosen.
oh, it's been such a pleasure,
No, no, go ahead.
Remy.
Say. Go
I was
ahead.
going to just quickly say, but obviously that's me, and just people just find whatever works for them and whatever makes
Yeah,
them feel really excited. You know, for some people, they might enjoy writing in the afternoon because they just love that space. So if that's what works for you, do it. You know, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. There's only the way that works for you and makes you feel excited about the writing.
yeah, yeah. Totally.
Mm.
So we're about to wrap up here. Thank you, Irenosen, for making the time. Thank you for being and sharing this space and time with us. Sharing your wisdom, dropping your truths, making us laugh, man, this was it. This is
Thank you
what
so
Afrolit
much,
is about.
Remy,
Yeah.
for being such
Yeah,
a wonderful, wonderful
yeah.
host. And man, I love you as a woman. You look so gorgeous.
I am the baddest bitch. I'm the
You are
baddest.
the best.
Yeah. People need to know. People need to know. I'm in this piece, bruh. Yo, people don't know Irenosen. Anyway,
They
so
don't know.
we know. James needs to take screenshots and stuff. So we just gotta hit a couple of poses, a couple of faces, some dark face, just for the control for camera. Are you guys getting this? Please send us thumbs up if you're getting all of these faces. We just need to show the cheekbones over here. They're getting all the cheekbones. All right, girl. Thank you so much for this, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Remy. It was such a joy. Thank you.
You're welcome, Irenosen. It was a pleasure, man.
Bye-bye.
It was a pleasure.
Oh,
Sure.
lovely.
Keep well
See you
and
soon.
enjoy the rest of the day. Stay safe.
You
and
too.
chat soon.
Keep safe and well, yeah? Talk to you
Yeah.
soon. Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. We are about to be off. Thanks so much to Zukiswa for hosting this, curating this session of Afrolit. Thanks for putting me in touch with Irenosen. Guys, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's coming up soon. Yeah, I'll be giving up all these fire tips. I'm not lying. I didn't make this. My sisters made this. But, you know, just look at this workout here. Look at looking fine. Okay, right. Let me log off and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Stay safe.